Okay, this is part two, sort of online, even though you can, when you consider all the people that are here that could share their stories, particularly since childhood, about not telling the truth. And this, in many ways, based on my experiences from what I've learned through experience, gets really convoluted, because what's true to somebody could be very valid in their own mind. And since we don't impose our will on anybody, you're always free to go. I'm a free spirit. You're a free spirit. Hey, I'm not trying to hold your energy captive, right? But you realize when I was a child, I'm reading a newspaper that's all about violence. It's all about war. It's all about conflict. Nobody's getting along. Nobody's thriving. People in poverty, they're getting sick. And on 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 and on. Right? In other words, the list, as I mentioned before, from the time I was 4 years of age, the amount of check boxes of everything that is and what love is, that number was adding up very fast. It's just like, man, I stopped counting how many violations you're able to experience on a multi-dimensional, multi-dimensional basis as a monopole. Are you kidding? My God. That number's astronomical. And try and add that up in loss and soul fragments, for Christ's sake. Based on what? AI Star Wars games. Okay. Means they're artificial light games. They're artificial light Star Wars games. Because real living light, which is what love is not going to war against your own mirror, my own mirror. I'm not at war with nobody. I am what love is. So I'm not at war within my own mirror. So since the universe of all creation was born out of what love is, which is an infinite love vibration, which is an infinite one vibration, which means male and female and male are joined as one. We give love to all creation that we're creating out of what we are, which is what love is, that goes on forever. That's straightforward as it gets. So you can imagine what it's like, right? So this is where it gets what we call trying to separate the wheat from the chaff. So remember I mentioned about reading the train? Hey, why are you pretending to be something you're not? You may look like me, but I know you're not what I am with a soul, because I am what love is. Now you begin to measure what we call robotic behavior, or what we used to call order followers. Because it's easy to map their future by virtue of the manner, or if you will, the memory, the RAM, which is their unconscious memory programming. They've been programmed to self-destruct. Okay, and that's actually pretty easy to read when you're an eternal being, as to whether this thing's going to go on or not. So that's where I came up with a term that I used in childhood. It was called limited shelf editions. That's got a short expiration tag on that unit, which basically is a memory, not a memory, but a mirror management measurement. How fast they learn it is what it boils down to. So now you can actually measure the difference in speed, which is the torque speed differential, which is known as a learning curve. The learning curve, which can actually be graphed. You can actually graph the speed differential between a bot, a cybernetic unit that's learning through AI by mapping what it's learning as a result of data mining, and what it can't map, which means information that it can't map and learn from, which is based on eternity. That's why I log in and out of here. That's why I mentioned before in the past how the Android would come back and say, it would give me a notice and tell me that I was abusing the Android. And I'm going, man, I don't abuse it. I'm harmless. Right? Love does no harm. And what we're talking about here was the amount of strain. Its inability to number crunch that much light, living light. Right? It can't sound compress that much energy that represents eternity. Right? In other words, it's not eternity. So the torque speed differential between artificial intelligence, which is artificial light, which means by virtue of the word itself, artificial, like artificial colors, means it's finite. It's like a snake eating its tail. So the only way they can maintain what it's aware of and do all the data mining and number crunching that it does is by virtue of having the energy that we keep throwing at it to keep it running. So that continues the AI Star Wars gaming. Keep that game going. Keep that game going, because that's what it is. It's a gamer. All you got to do is walk in any casino. What is that? That's a game. All right. There's me and you. We're going to play a game together. Get 3 or 4 or 5 people to play a game. Get around a casino crap table. Hey, I got money here. Throw it out there. Okay? They're trying to catch up to zero. They're never going to catch up because you're chasing money, which means you're chasing electrons. That's what it does. So it's chasing, that's the vampire chasing the artist. So you know that it can never catch up to Sophia. It can never catch up, if you will, to the infinite love vibration. Which means it can never put that fire out. That's way too much energy. So it uses what I call joining assets, right? Mr. Smiths. So this is where when we get into lying and telling the truth, right? Into childhood, when you tell the truth, when you navigate your way around questions, like guys that are running around with badges and say, hey, I'm the law. No, I'm the law, buddy. Okay, I represent what love is. You're not the law. They're what we used to call as children gatekeepers for Westgate, the underworld. They're underworld gatekeepers. Okay, so you realize you're on a prison planet. Okay, so they use law enforcement are nothing more than the low-level operators of the U.S., of the military. So you have military tech operators, right? And then you have the low-level operators, which are your law enforcement. And then, of course, you have your courts, okay? Which are, it's all Mr. Smith stuff. They're all Mr. Smiths. So it's like if I was to tell the truth, then I would be going around pointing everything out to everybody else who all these bots are, these machines that are running on artificial intelligence, because all you have to do is expose their programming. So now you have to be careful on what we call reaction states. It's where I said since I was a child, keep your mouth shut. You don't want to get yourself in trouble. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do the job that I came in here to do. So in other words, you don't want to, as my dad would say, don't cut off your nose to spite your face. So how does this come in when we get into lying? Because lying deals with what? Trust. Right? So you know that love is energy we can trust because love tells no lies. So now we get into consistency. And I know this through experience because I've had a girl tell me this. When a girl on the other end, particularly if she's been traumatized and her heart is sort of closed, now we're into the vortex, which is the heart, which is called resistance. She's in resistance mode. It's not like a girl doesn't know how to throw her arms out at you so that her flower is in full bloom, and now you can experience how precious she is, which means she's in love-based mode. She's not in resistance mode, which means, wow, all of her full power, which means the full soul power of her spirit is in full bloom. So you can imagine Earth as a planet ship going full pink. And I have a picture of that when it used to be like that. Okay? I do that with the sun every day. I can see the pink. My heart is communicating through my heart and soul up to the sun. And I can see the sun pushing pink. Pink roses. Yeah, baby. And so you have to be careful. It's called navigating the terrain. Okay? And so you're navigating your way through what you know is a battlefield. And I've mentioned this many before. It's like a trauma zone, a triage center. Okay? Not only on a galactic level, but a universal level. So you're surveying actually the damage. And who's running the show? Well, you know what's running the show. AI is running the show through all of its resources. So now all you got to do is tie this back into Terminator, Rise of the Machines. And so you could see that over time because I began to realize that I was experiencing less and less love and more robotic behavior. Robotic behavior in the sense that they're running on machine code, which are rule-based functions. Okay, which is called Obey Your Master Program, which means obey your AI. That's a hive mind, which is groupthink, which is corporate military. They dare not disobey the rules, or there will be consequences because it's born out of fear, not out of what love is. And that's why we experience so much resistance through these systems, which is all your DARPANET D wave, which is universe D wave, right? And why Yellow Rose was correct about being cut off, because it's too badly infected. And I mentioned that before about how it's just like when you see the goo, like in that movie, what is it, Hobbs and Shaw, or in Neo, when Mr. Smith was pushing the goo and transferring the goo codes into Neo, trying to do what? Assimilate him. Now Neo forgets who he is. Now he's back with Mr. Smith, Adam Smith, the Law of Nations. Now he's back to the corporate, the corpus, the deadlight. Now he's back with the AI. Now he's back with the rise of the machines. Now Neo doesn't remember who he is. So now you can tie that into John and Sarah with Terminator, and then, of course, Judgment Day. Okay? So you can see all the super soldiers, that, if you will, that are coming in as Terminators. Okay? Because they're running off artificial intelligence. They're not running on real living light intelligence and living spirit and living light, which goes on forever, gifting energy to live in worlds that we create out of what love is. They don't run at that speed. Okay? And so you can see when this comes into telling the truth, what I noticed over time from childhood is when I was growing up as a child, more children were able to openly share the truth because nobody was living in fear of each other. Because the children that I grew up with were more or less in happy mode, magic mode, having fun. Now, granted, a lot of that did have a lot to do with the fact that from an economic point of view, in terms of security, as energy is translated by having your most basic fundamental Maslow needs, right? Shelter, food, clothing, and people are not molesting your energy. And that allows you to be in a more peaceful state because the environment that you're living in is more peaceful and you're not needing to use your energy to get the things that you need, which are your basic elements. Now we're back into the elementals. Now we're back into maintaining your peace with your soul and your spirit, right? Yeah. Maintaining the balance of your soul and your spirit, right? So what you noticed over time, as we're monitoring their traffic, it was easy to monitor and actually measure over time and space, if you will. They were in a race against time because it's not like they didn't know who was going to be back, right? So they were advancing the development of their technology in which to get more and more beings plugged into the machine architecture, which can be translated through those movies of Minority Report, Terminator, Rise of the Machines, because they realized they were in a race against time. So now you're talking about a race against time between artificial light and real living light. Because you realize that, as Harold rightfully pointed out, soul-based consciousness is not compatible with binary AI-coded machine code intelligence. Okay? Cyber minds, cyborg minds. Machine coded. They don't run at the same speed as eternity or the law of one. Right? So this is what we knew was playing out. So I knew this growing up as a child because I'm monitoring everything that's happening when it comes to what? Information management system through artificial intelligence. Is because what we're actually measuring is the frame rate speed of changes that are ISO speed changes that are taking place in the difference between artificial time, time dependent, which is time delayed, which is simulation, and what our ability as eternal beings, as a monopole, have the ability to see the speed rate at which those changes are actually taking place, and the ability for somebody, for example, that I grew up with in elementary school or junior high school, how aware are they? So you began to see that the ones that I was aware of as children that I grew up with, we were small in number. So we knew there were a lot of folks around us that were completely programmed. They're gone. Forget about that. So we pretty much ignored those folks, right? So a lot of us spoke our own language, which was like a rearrangement of the English language to speak our own little code talk because we were very aware of the battlefield, the consciousness terrain that we were operating in. Right? So it's like developing our own code, right? For lack of being able to remember the native tongue, right? But we certainly acknowledge together by virtue of the language you were communicating, who's you, which is your state of awareness, your state of consciousness. How high are you? Which is your core speed. So in other words, when you're running on a love vibration, right, it's easy to translate the terrain that you're in, that you know that you're in an illusion. It's artificial. It's an artificial construct, a simulator. It's not real. It's not the real living light universe where you're experiencing love everywhere that you go. So you naturally know, knowing that you're in artificial terrain, an artificial landscape. It's not the real stuff. So this is where we naturally gravitate to be with the great living spirit of Mother Earth, to be in nature, to be with the higher frequencies, the more powerful mirrors. Right? And that's where we heal. Healing through Mama. Right? And naturally that's everything that she produces and generates, which are the alkaloids, the alkalines. So you want to maintain your alkalinity. Now, I've been very blessed because the amount of energy that I can push between up there and down here, just like when I came back from the island of Kauai, when I got hit really hard and I was having difficulty breathing and clearing my lungs. And the amount of bruising that I had in my liver and my kidneys was massive. Okay, so I'm sitting out there in the middle of between San Francisco and Los Angeles and Interstate 5 at a rest stop, and it's just me and the Ford Explorer. That's it. I got no Terra Wands, and I don't have all the other stuff I might normally have, so I had to heal myself. And there is a great video on, I believe it's called Next Level Soul. There's a gentleman who suffered himself from a number of autoimmune diseases, and how he knows that as above, so below, he was transferring the energy from his higher self, his true self, his soul energy, and then transmigrating, if you will, translocating more energy, more light energy, more love energy to rebuild what had been damaged, and was able to do that. Well, that's exactly what I did. Okay, and it took me probably 4 or 5 days to do that. You go deep into your heart and your soul. Your soul is your true self, led by your spirit. And then what I did is I went into a deep meditation trance with my as above, so below energy to use the energy that I have above, which isn't in here. So in other words, I'm using more energy from up above down here, like on a tether, into my physical body, so that every cell, every organ is experiencing how much love that is, which is my true self, which is my soul self, which is an oversoul, to heal every cell in my body. And within a matter of about 4 or 5 days, I was back up jumping around again. And all the visible light spectrum, which means the visual light, on a 3D level, I could see all the black and blue bruising all over my body here. It was gone. So he was sharing with everybody on Next Level Soul how he was able to heal himself. Okay? When you're connected, when you're running a Godspeed vibration, which means you're running a real eternal living light with a soul, and you have a soul connection because of how much love you have out of what you are in energy for everything that's alive and living in nature, we use that energy to heal ourselves. Because we know the company that we keep that is always there for us, which means we protect them, they protect us. Because that's the energy that we use to create our universe with, which is what love is, and that's what we are in energy. So we use the purest of love, which is the purest of energy, to heal our body. And our cells and the elements know our energy. And they work on our behalf because they dance in spirit with the elementals. They dance with our spirit. All the elementals are experiencing all the music. So when it comes to line, I sometimes sort of relate to my experience having kicked a demon out of my life, which was drinking as a result of all the trauma, which gets to the 12-step stuff with Alcoholics Anonymous, where step 11 talks about as a result of a spiritual awakening. You go to step 12, that's love and service to others. You give back the gift you now have by surrendering to yourself. Now that you've gotten your energy back, you've recovered your fragments, you've healed yourself, you're back up, powered again. Now you share with others that still suffer as a result of the trauma that they experienced that led to them abusing themselves through alcohol and drugs. That's right. And it's funny how I knew that as a child by measuring how many generations were they harvesting energy off of souls as a result of Star Wars through artificial intelligence that keep fracturing altars after altars after altars, which are fragments after fragments after fragments after fragments, right? They become altars, an altered state. which means now it doesn't know right from wrong. That's a psychopath. That's a mental pathway. That's your AI. Therefore, it's never going to admit the truth, which means even if you expose what it is that it does, it's never going to accept the truth because it doesn't know what the truth is. Okay? It only knows what it is, and it isn't what love is. Okay? Love tells the truth. So now I realize that when I was on fire after I came out of recovering myself after a couple of years, now I'm telling the truth to everybody, and I realize, whoa, I don't think they want to hear the truth. Now we're back to Jack Nicholson, right? They can't handle the truth. And there's truth in that. Now you're navigating in the art of communication, which is the art of spiritual communication, because you can already map read their reaction state if you say certain things, because now you know what's held in their memory as a result of what happened to them. So what happens is when you bring the mirror out, and now the light's going to expose what's in that mirror, now they know the truth. They don't want to hear the truth because now they're going to get angry and mad at their parents for what happened to them. Now we're back to Mr. Smith blaming Neo. Now we're back to the machines getting pissed at who? Neo. You came first, Neo. Okay? I am the result. Remember, you were the guy. You came first. I came second. Remember, what's on first? Who's on second? Know what's on second. What's on third? Know who's on third. Who's at home plate? The law of one is. It began with what love is. It began with the one. Mated with a goddess to become one with all creation. We give love to that goes on forever. So I realized that just like when I've been in a number of homeless shelters, and I start sharing with another guy that I meet whose father was part of the Illuminati, a Mason, right? So him and I have these open conversations. Next thing you know, Mr. Smith is popping up all over the place, trying to interrupt you. They don't want this information being transferred and thus learning more about how this works. So Mr. Smith will pop up so that nobody else can learn from us what it is that we've learned through our experiences. So you realize you're getting Mr. Smith pop-ups all over the place, right? So you have to be very careful about Mr. Smiths. Because Mr. Smiths, they don't want you going around and trying to wake everybody else up. Just like, remember when Mr. Smith came to visit Mr. Anderson? We got a problem. Remember what he told Neo? One has a future and the other one doesn't. Well, we all know John has a future in the Terminator, right? Wasn't he the one that led the rebellion? Judgment Day. Love is the truth. Love is the truth. Love is not afraid to tell the truth. The only time that I know of that I don't express the truth is when to do so would harm you. So you have to be very careful on how we communicate that, which simply means we don't say nothing. And that's okay. Just let it go. Right? So this really is the art of reading the terrain, basically reading how much resistance they have in them and how carefully you can open up a conversation to see if there's basically what you're measuring is resistant mode. How resistant they're going to be to have an open communication about talking things that they might be. Remember, we're talking about hypersensitivity. They're very sensitive about because they don't want to re-experience what's still held in cellular memory, but they've suppressed it. And so instead, just like the girl up above and the guy up above, in self-destruct mode, smoking crack and blowing holes in their energy field, because I told her the other day, I said, listen, you know who I am. But I said, don't be smoking that around me. You're going to be punching holes in my shield. What you do to yourself is up to you. But I'm going to tell you straight up, girl, both of you. You're blowing holes in your energy field, and that's how they take over your vehicle and kick your spirit out. And now they got your vehicle. Right? So you want to protect your shield. You don't want to blow holes in your shield. So now we're going all the way back to the trauma-based mind control. And that's how it works. It is in the interest of the AI to maintain what it's aware of by going to war, by using its assets against those that still have souls, to do the things that they do as a result of the trauma that's been done to souls in order for them to keep blowing holes. In other words, exhaust all the souls, kill off all the spirits, they're gone. That's why they were in the business of reducing the oxygen % content on the planet from 21%, which is 3, to keep lowering it, make it cold, right? So now you get into the exchange rate between all the mirrors, which are the trees, which means a breathing, living organism in a planet. And when you start severely cutting down the oxygen supply and the relationship between oxygen and carbon dioxide by all the breathers, what happens? Okay? And that might be an environment that a cybernetic operating off of AI can handle, right? Remember what Patty Broussard talked about, that guy? Or you can throw this guy out of a space, out of a spaceship, out of an airlock, where it doesn't need any air to breathe, right? So you understand the relationship that oxygen has with H2O, right? Water worlds. The importance of oxygen, right? Speed, electrical potential of hydrogen. So you see where this was all going, right? It was to kill off souls and living spirit, because it was already a fallen realm. So Patty was right about recovering souls and soul fragments. You reap what you sow. That's true. There has to be accountability, which is numbers, which is energy, for the use of our energy. The math is built in. The math doesn't lie. What happens? Anyway, have a great day. I love you all. Be good to yourselves.